Hello WBSE. It's good to be back with another review for you all. Tonight I'm going to be doing one that there's been a lot of talk about recently, and as you can see, this is not a bottle that I just opened. I've had this open for a couple of months, and I really like it. In my mind, this is my personal 2017 Bourbon of the Year. The Old Forester Prohibition 1920 edition. And there's a lot of talk about it, and at least one or two times a week someone pops up that is a relatively new whiskey drinker and wants to know about it and wants to know our opinions. So whether you're just starting or whether you've been drinking for a while, this is a worthwhile bourbon. And I wanted to get some tasting notes. Honestly, I haven't been into this bottle in about 3 weeks, so I couldn't right off the top of my head tell you everything about it, so we're going to start from scratch. And let me tell you really quickly a few things about this particular whiskey. This is 115 proof, and the reason why is because that was the common standard in 1920. Owsley Brown, who had recently taken over the reins of the Brown-Forman Company in 1917 from his father, who had been one of the founders, was able to procure a permit to make medicinal whiskey during Prohibition. And this is supposedly based upon his Prohibition era whiskey that he produced at 115 proof, which was the standard at the time for the medicinal released from the barrel whiskey before it was bottled. All right, so going with that, this is a little stronger than a lot of whiskeys, but it's not up to the proof of, say, a George T. Stagg or some of the barrel proof EHTs and things like that. It's sort of in between. On the nose, the first thing I notice is just this fantastic richness. Sometimes you'll get noses on a whiskey that are either weak or they just seem watered down. This is so full of things, and let me go through it a little bit. For me, the first things that hit me are dark fruits like cherries and maybe black plum, along with the cinnamon and some clove. Underlying that, there's some vanilla and a little bit of oakiness. There's a brown sugar, maybe a burned brown sugar there. And oddly, there's a grain, almost a malt note in the nose, which is a little bit unusual for a bourbon, and it might explain why this is such a good whiskey to me, because I started out my whiskey adventure as a Scotch drinker. There's a little bit of honey there. A few other minor little things, maybe even a little bit of tobacco. All in all, it's extremely complex on the nose, and one of the best bourbon noses that I have had for something that wasn't $100 plus per bottle. Let's see what it tastes like. The dark cherry, nutmeg, cinnamon are up at the forefront. There's just a little bit of warm burn at the beginning of the palate, but it's not overwhelming. I will caution you though, especially if you're a new whiskey drinker, don't gulp this, don't shoot this. That's not the way to drink this. You won't enjoy it, and it will burn if you hit it hard. This is a sipping whiskey. You need to take small drinks. You need to hold it in your mouth. If you don't, you're not going to get out of it what I'm explaining to you now. If you drink it that way and you take big, huge gulps and you're not accustomed to it, it's going to overwhelm you and you're not going to taste anything but the burn. On the second sip, I get a lighter note at the beginning of the palate, a little bit more vanilla, and the fruit part of it tastes lighter and paler, maybe more like a peach or a pale plum. As the palate develops and the spice starts taking over, you also get that nice tobacco and some what I like to call harness leather in the palate. And that's that leather, that rich leather from well-aged and cared for high-quality tack or saddles is something that I really, really like in a whiskey. That appeals to me a lot. That carries over into the finish also. As that leather and tobacco note and the spice, especially clove, fade into the finish, that's when the oak and the clove take over. You get some underlying cinnamon, and there's a dryness to a very long finish, very much like a full-bodied wine, like a Cabernet Sauvignon. And I really like that. The finish stays for a long time. It's not overly sweet. It's not bitter in any way. There's a little bit of burn, but it's a warming burn and it's not overwhelming. So I hope that that was the kind of information that will help you decide whether that whiskey is one that suits you. It's a little stronger than some, but I know that especially if you've been drinking bourbon for a while, most of us learn that as you get significantly over 100 proof, the richness and the depth of the bourbon increases. So take it easy with this if you're not used to high proof bourbons. But for the $60 to $65 range that this is normally found at, it's absolutely an incredible whiskey. And as I said, this is the Brett Mullins Bourbon of the Year for 2017, I think. Not because, don't mistake me that I'm saying this is the best bourbon out there. I'm not. This is something new that's out there for this year. And in its price range, I think it basically kills everything else. Look, I'm not a hater on Blanton's or any of these others that are highly sought after. But I will put this up against a standard Blanton's, which I have here on my shelf. Right here. I will put these two up against each other and this one will win every time for me. Doesn't mean it will for you, but I'm just telling you guys, this is deep and rich and it's worth a look. So don't pass it by, give it a chance. See you later, WBSC.